Hi, welcome back to Prescribed Vibes. I'm Sierra Carroll.
And I'm Stephanie Balistracci. We're so glad you're joining us for our second episode. If you're feeling the holiday season creeping up on you and the stress levels rising, you are not alone.
Absolutely not. Today we're going to dive into the complicated world of holiday stress and family dynamics, something pretty much everybody deals with. Whether you love the holidays or dread them, we've all got something.
And we're going to talk about why this time of year can be emotionally charged, share some strategies to help you stay grounded, and hopefully give you some practical tips to make it through with your mental health intact, most importantly.
Yes, that is most important. All right, let's start with this. So, why is it that the holidays, which are supposed to be joyful, merry, lovely, why do they end up being so stressful for most of us?
I think that the holidays can bring a lot of pressure. There's this pressure to spend time with your family, right? So it's about family, the pressure to create the perfect holiday moments and get the perfect gift for some of us. And then that financial pressure that comes with it. So some of us travel, some of us have to host, and that's a lot. Plus, if you throw in having complicated family dynamics or strained relationships, that just adds like a whole other layer of tension and how you're going to face that situation. How are you going to show up? Is that person invited? Is it going to be weird? So there's a lot going on.
Yeah, just so many different opportunities for something stressful and
Get triggered.
complicated. Yeah, right. Financial is a huge stressor, and then family dynamics as well. And then, like, social media, right? You see everyone posting these picture perfect family gatherings. They went here, they went there, they baked this, they bought that. And we can start to compare our reality to their highlight reel, right? And that's not their reality either, but that's how we perceive it. So that can make things complicated as well.
Yeah, I totally agree. And that's a personal reason why that was one of the reasons to remove myself from social media. And I don't miss it. I think that there's a lot of positives to that, but I'm not going to get into a tangent about that. So let's break it down a little. What do you think are some common triggers for holiday stress?
I think one of the big ones is expectation versus reality. Maybe you expect your Christmas, your family gathering, your whatever holiday you celebrate to be peaceful and warm and picture perfect, but old arguments resurface, or someone's behavior will create a conflict, or it can be disappointing and hurtful. So there's just a lot to navigate, right? It's such an abnormal time of year, right? We all get stripped away from our typical routine and our structure, which already throws us off a little bit. Everybody's stressed whether they had an increased workload around the holidays because they had to wrap everything up before the end of the year, or we're going to be traveling, we're going to be financially strained, we're going to be around family members who maybe they don't get along with each other, we don't get along with them. We know someone's temperamental and we have to kind of tiptoe around certain things. I mean, there's just so many opportunities for something to come up, that I think if we adjust our expectations to something's probably going to go awry, somebody's going to get frustrated, somebody's going to get upset. How do I want to handle that in the moment when it does come up, and kind of being proactive in how you plan to navigate those things.
Yes, absolutely. I love how you said being proactive about how to navigate, because sometimes that stress comes from just being around certain family members who you may have had beef with, or hasn't respected your boundaries, or just even their energy, just something that, you don't vibe with them. I think it's really important to have a plan in place, and that can be something you can talk to a therapist about or journal about. Have a vision of how you want that day to go. What do you want that day to look like for yourself? You can get so creative with it. Do you want to go for a walk? Do you want to take breaks? Do you want to create your own memories? You can really make it whatever you want. And being proactive, taking some time to figure out what are my triggers, how am I going to handle it, that's going to be, I think, super helpful.
Yeah, and just to speak again a little bit to the expectation versus reality, I think a lot of us can try to maintain this level of hope for things to be different, and that skews our expectations away from reality. So if someone in your life has consistently been this person, let's try to show up expecting them to be the person that they've always been and not bring our desire for them to be something different into our expectations, because that's a lot of times what can be triggering and lead to a letdown or a conflict where we kind of set ourselves up for failure in that way. And not maliciously, right? We have the best of intentions. We want to have high hopes and good thoughts for the people we care about, but it's just not always realistic.
I really like that you said that, because sometimes it can be really hard to accept people for who they are. That doesn't mean that you agree or approve. It just means you're not really fighting against that reality, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, more on boundaries, I did want to get into how do we set boundaries with family members without feeling guilty, because that can be very challenging for some of us, that we want to say, hey, I don't want to talk about that. And you want to honor your boundaries, but then that guilt may kick in where, well, this is my aunt, or this person really wants to get close to me. So, how do we do that? How do we set those boundaries without feeling that guilt?
So, I'm going to speak closely to that, but maybe not directly, just because something that has been coming up in sessions a lot recently is the reality of the fact that the consequence for a boundary not being respected by someone does not only lie with the person who crossed the boundary. They're going to get a consequence, assuming that we maintain the boundary and we enforce the consequence for it. But I don't think we think enough about the fact that we bear a consequence as well when we have to enforce the consequences of a boundary. We don't want that relationship to be altered or strained. We don't want to have to not see that person, not go to that thing. We have to bear the consequence as well, and that's part of what makes it so tough sometimes to enforce a boundary. So that's one side of it. But to be real, I mean, it can feel hard to say no to like a family tradition or a relative who insists on certain expectations, even if it's not what's in our best interest or what we would prefer. And so getting past that guilt, reframing our perspective on it. I am not enforcing this boundary to hurt someone else, but instead to protect myself.
Yeah, exactly. I was just going to add to that, that boundaries, they're not selfish. It's about you. It's a form of self-care. So the more you repeat that, boundaries is part of self-care. It's okay to protect your mental and emotional well-being even during the holidays. So just because it's a family gathering or Christmas or whatever holiday you are celebrating, you still come first, and your well-being, you want to be able to honor that. And remind yourself of your why. If you need to say no to preserve your mental health, or because you want to create a calmer environment for your kids, that's valid. Sometimes even rehearsing a simple script ahead of time. For example, I'd love to participate, but I need to take some time off for myself this year. And not that you need to give an explanation, but if it helps, go for it. There are many times that sometimes I just have to say, hey, you know what? Let me think about that and get back to you, because my people pleasing part comes in. I want to say yes, and I want to make it work, and then I regret it and feel resentful. So remind yourself of your why, take a pause and explain to yourself, hey, do I really want to do this? How am I going to feel? Why is it important for me to say no? And I think that's going to help with your self-talk and, just like Sierra said, reframing.
I like that a lot. I'm definitely a fan of kind of practicing ahead of time. Like, okay, what kind of blanket phrase can I bring with me to throw out there in the moment, because if I'm trying to come up with it as someone's asking me, I'm going to get stressed, I'm going to get dysregulated, and I'm maybe going to agree just because it's in the moment and I don't want to, I haven't prepared. So I love having a little bit of a script in mind. Knowing, like, again, when we're talking about our expectations, expect that people might not love our boundaries, and it doesn't always mean that they don't care about you or that the boundary is wrong. We all just kind of live in our own perspective, and maybe when we can have a bigger conversation around those boundaries, depending on the person, if we can have a bigger conversation about it, that's great. If we can't, we've got to kind of work on some self-soothing and just knowing that, like you said, remembering our why. It's not because I'm a bad person, it's not because I'm mean or hateful, it's because of this reason. I need to enforce this because of my why.
And I wanted to add just what you said about that boundaries might upset people. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. We don't know how people are going to react. Some people may be very respectful and understanding, and other people may throw a tantrum. So being prepared for that and owning it, remembering that why, and that it is about what you can control. It's not about how others respond, even though, you know, we don't want to have to deal with a negative response, but expect that it can go in that direction.
Yeah, I think, I guess kind of tying back into the guilt aspect, I think sometimes when people react to our boundaries or us saying no, we can kind of question ourselves a little bit, like, am I wrong for this? Does this make me a bad person, etc.? And that's maybe where some of our emotional response comes from, is questioning ourselves or maybe insecurities that are coming out. Self-doubt. And so if we can be really firm in ourselves and knowing I'm not a bad person for setting this boundary, I'm not being malicious about it, I'm not trying to hurt anybody, that can mitigate our emotional response too, to be really anchored in who we are as a person.
Yep, I couldn't agree more. So we are going to move on to coping strategies for family gatherings. So let's talk about that. This is where having a plan can be a lifesaver. So for instance, deciding ahead of time how long you're going to stay at an event. I do this a lot just because my social battery will run out and I don't want to become a pumpkin. So if you know 2 hours is your limit, give yourself permission to leave after that. And that personally is a big one for me. How long am I going to be staying somewhere where it's not natural for me to be speaking and talking, making conversation for hours on end? So that's one example. What are your thoughts, Zira?
Yeah, that's a great idea, knowing, like, I know about how long my battery lasts, and if I'm in the moment and I'm like, oh, maybe I've got another 30 minutes left in my battery, we can adjust as we go, but just knowing ahead of time, like, it's okay for me to leave when it's time for me to leave. Here's the thing about those types of boundaries too, right? Maybe people don't want us to leave because they love us, they enjoy us, they want to experience that holiday with us, etc., and we love that. But the reality is, and with any boundary, they're not the one who has to deal with the consequences of us not enforcing that boundary for ourselves, right? So in that situation, like, if your battery gets drained and you don't leave when it's time for you to leave, but you wait until everyone else is okay with you leaving, then you go home and you're completely drained for the next day, or you can't get things you need to get done, or you can't go to your next outing. And so there's repercussions for that people aren't typically considerate of when they're begging us not to leave early, or, you know, whatever that looks like. So just keeping that in mind too, that there's a price that we pay, and are we willing to pay it or not. Personally, I love the idea of having, like, a support person, so someone, you know, like, maybe you have a conversation with them ahead of time, like, hey, I'm going to be going into this family gathering and I have an idea it might be tough for me. Is it cool if I, like, vent to you, if I ask for validation, reassurance, support while I'm there, just so that I can get through it? Or if you have someone you can bring with you, that's helpful too. But just having someone who gets it when you're maybe in a room full of people who don't.
Yep. And if you don't have that support person, or they're not answering in a timely fashion or how you'd like, another tip is to step away if you need to. That's a big one for me, is being able to switch my environment, so whether it's taking a short walk, going into another room, or even spending a few minutes in the bathroom just breathing and regrouping. I laugh about that because one time we had a ton of people over and my fiance was in the bathroom and I didn't realize it, but later on in the night he said, I just needed to go in there just to breathe. It was too much. And I totally get that. So just keep in mind that taking a walk, taking deep breaths, switching your environment can help.
Absolutely. And don't be afraid to listen to that desire within yourself. Like when you start to notice, let that prompt you to go take a breath, to go for a walk, rather than trying to push through it and hold that mask on real tight. But speaking of breathing, let us not forget or underestimate the power of breathing techniques and grounding techniques. I know my favorite go-to is called Safe Place, and I use it constantly. It's something you can do just for a few seconds, or if you need to go take a break from everybody and spend a few minutes in that place, but it's just creating a mental image of somewhere you find to be really safe and comforting, and then noticing what all of your senses would be experiencing in that place. So do I hear waves? Do I feel the breeze? Do I smell salt water in the air? Do I feel sand squishing beneath my feet? And the more you can engulf yourself in the senses of being in that place, even though it's imaginary, the more relaxed our nervous system is going to get. So that's my go-to. But Steph, what's a go-to you have?
I really like just closing my eyes and taking deep breaths, and also incorporating prayer. That's really helpful for me. It just immediately helps me relax my nervous system. I say a little prayer, and then I just take deep breaths, close my eyes. Sometimes I don't need to if I'm in a different environment, but I rely a lot on my faith, and that has helped me just stay very grounded. Some other ones that have been helpful to clients is the 5-4-3-2-1 method, and that can be naming the 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. So it helps you bring you back to that present moment. But there are so many, and we will continue talking about those throughout the different episodes. And looks like we are ready for a listener question.
Yay, we have a listener question that ties into this topic. So, listener says, how do I handle conversations with family members who don't respect my lifestyle choices?
Wow, that can be a tough one. My advice would be to be firm but kind. So an example could look like, I appreciate your concern, but I'm comfortable with my choices. And you really don't owe anyone a detailed explanation. You want to make sure that you do own it and that you're kind and respectful, because some people just don't have manners, right? So they're just asking because they don't see anything wrong with the questions, or they just, think their opinions matter more than they do. And they can continue being them, but it's okay for you to acknowledge, I hear you. However, I'm very comfortable with my choices, or I'm very happy right now. This is what I love.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes just changing the subject or using humor can diffuse things. I think that it's easy to get defensive, right? We want to defend our life choices and the life we've created for ourselves. And so we can jump to the defensive, and that's not always being on our own team. If we're not talking to someone who has the desire or the ability to understand, to sit with us and open their mind and their heart and really be curious and compassionate about our lifestyle choices and why we've made them, then there's really no sense in defending them to those people. So know your goal when you do try to engage in a conversation about it and try to defend your side. Is this going to be helpful to me in the long run, or would it behoove me to just change the subject, deflect with humor, knowing that they can't and won't understand, and I'm not going to spend my energy trying to convince them?
I love that. I love that you said just not spending your energy convincing them. It's not worth it. It's your life, unless it's someone really close to you. And if it is someone really close to you, chances are they're not going to say something like that, right? So protect that energy. And if you do want to get into it, then just also know what to expect. That can turn into a different kind of conversation. So be prepared for that as well.
Yeah, definitely. All right. We hope that these tips helped you guys feel a little more prepared for the holiday season. Remember, your mental health matters and it's okay to prioritize it.
That's right. You deserve a holiday season that feels right for you. So thank you so much for listening to Prescribed Vibes.
We'll see you next time. Until then, take care and set those boundaries.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.